Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait for Instagram to catch up just for a couple of seconds. Got it. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Angela Bryan. I'm the program manager at Hope for HIE, and we're having a really important and awesome conversation around camp safety and inclusion, especially. It's starting to get warmer weather here, and our families are starting to explore some of those summer opportunities for their children. So I'm so thrilled to be joined by Annie Gunning, who I'm sure a lot of you know, who's our Certified Child Life Specialist here at Hope for HIE. But we're also joined by Angela Bryan, who has so many acronyms after her name of professional credentials. I know she's also a certified child life specialist. She's a trauma and injury prevention coordinator, and she's going to talk a little bit more about her role and experience. But together, they're going to be sharing tips and insights and considerations to help all of you feel hopefully just more confident and prepared when it comes to finding the right camp fit for your child, whatever their needs may be, and just making sure that they have a safe and inclusive experience. So thanks so much for being here, you two.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yes. I would love to just start with some introductions. So maybe Annie, you go first, and then Angela, you can go after.
Yes, I'm happy to be here again. I'm Annie, like Deanna said, the Child Life Specialist at Hope for HIE and grief counselor. So my role is just to support our families with any kind of psychosocial support that our patients, our parents, or our siblings might need. So any kind of upcoming procedures or surgeries, hospitalizations, but anything that is also outside of that. So any type of just coping skills that we're working on, because this is all a long journey, and there's lots of things that come up with different types of big feelings that are happening. So I'm always available for families to reach out via email, or I post a lot of different resources and information on our Facebook page. So yeah, I'm just here to help support our patients, our families.
And my name's Angela, and my background, I'm a certified child life specialist as well. I've been one for, I would like to call myself a more seasoned child life specialist. I've been around for a little bit, but I did clinical work for about 12 years, and then I worked for a camp that serves children living with medical conditions for about 7 years, and my role with that was bringing camp into the hospital environment. I was an outreach director, and now I am back in the hospital, and my new role is trauma and injury prevention coordinator. So all things safety. And I work with pediatric and adult populations. So this is very dear to my heart to talk about camps that serve children living with medical conditions and just the safety measures and just questions in general around getting your kids to camp and how do you pick a camp. So I love all things camp. I have about 18 years experience with medical camps. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. And this is a huge topic that pops up for our families every year because there's this huge desire to get their child, whether they have medical complexity or their siblings, just involved and just feel that form of connectedness and bonding. Mm-hmm. But there's so many hesitancies that are behind this decision, especially when you take into consideration like staff preparedness, medical emergency, and all of these things that can feel maybe burdensome for families and prevent them from following through with the camp. So I think just walking them through the process is going to be an amazing experience for them. So we're going to start with choosing the right camp. And we have a couple of questions we're going to start with. The first one is just any key factors that you have in terms of what parents should consider when choosing a camp for their child, especially if they have a medical complexity or secondary diagnoses that go with it along with HIE.
Definitely. So my advice, is to talk to your medical team. I'm not, I live in Charlotte, so I'm familiar with the camps in this surrounding area. I'm not, I don't know everything in all the other areas, but I would definitely start with talking with your medical team. Do you have a child life specialist that you're working with? Do you have a social worker? Do you have, your provider? Those kinds of things. So just say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about camps. My kids around the age, it's usually 6 to 16 is when you traditionally see kids ready for especially overnight camps. So just start talking to your medical team, seeing what's out there, do your own research. You guys are a part of a great community, so talk to other caregivers and other families and kind of see where people are going. I think that's important. I also said, what's the age range that your child's at and things like that. But do your research, talk to your team. A great network to look at if you're ever just interested is Serious Fun Network. They have camps all over the world and in our country. So those are great ones to even just start out with to see, because they have each week of their summer camps are serving a different medical population. So it's great. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and just to I probably should have backed up a little bit. So Angela and I have known each other for years. I don't know that we said this, and we worked together in the hospital clinical setting for a long time. And then as we both moved in different places outside of the hospital, we've remained connected, and she worked in this wonderful camp role. And so I've always relied on her, like whenever I had a question about camp, and even when I've had stuff with our HIE families, I'm reaching out about things about camp. I always rely on Angela to kind of give me the ins and outs of it. And then just to kind of add a little bit more on to what she said, she mentioned the weeks of camp. So if your child does have CP, if your child has CVI or hearing loss, or some camps have specifically neurology or some type of a neuro deficit week or something like that. So all of these camps, sometimes they have like weeks. They have a CP week, they have a CF versus a week. So that's something also just to kind of consider, is what diagnosis your child has and what weeks will fit best for them.
Yes.
And what's also nice is some camps, they might have family weekends. So if you're curious about a camp, but you're not ready to send your kid for the whole week, they might have family weekends in the fall and spring that you guys could go to and spend like a Friday to a Sunday there and kind of get a feel for the camp culture. I also was saying, start following some camps on social media so you can kind of get a feel for them as well. But then some do the specific diagnosis weeks, and some also offer like sibling support too, which is nice. So just every camp's going to be different. So what works for one might not work for the other. That's why it's important to just kind of ask around and do some research.
Oh, yes. And I know that in terms of camps being accessible and inclusive, it's not just physical.
Yeah.
That's not just physically, it's also emotionally and mentally too. So in your professional opinion, what makes a camp accessible on all of those levels?
This is one of the things I love most about camp. And I use a cheesy phrase, I'm drinking the camp Kool-Aid, because when you're there and you're around the energy and just the culture, and you just, these campers come back and they're just like, I am all about it. So I think it's a great platform outside of the physical accessibility that is provided, because they do a thorough head to toe of every camp, what's accessible, what's not, what do we need to fix, those kinds of things. They're pretty well-oiled camps, which is nice, but it allows the kid to just be themselves. Like, where else can you go where you can be accepted, be yourself, be free, be silly, be creative? You're going to get to do what you want to do. Like at the beginning of the week, a lot of camps will get to know the campers and say, like, what do you want to get out of this week? What are you scared about? What are you nervous about? As a camp counselor, that's, I've been in multiple roles in a camp setting. My job is to get to know your kid and your camper and help them have the best week they want to have. What do they want to get out of it? So it's just an opportunity to be in a safe environment and just be you and be around other kids and campers that are going through something similar. Like it's magical. I don't even like to use that word, but it's like, what other word can you use?
Yeah.
But it's like natural conversations that happen, building each other up, like just encouragement and just being in a safe environment where you can just be yourself and nobody's questioning what's going on. So I think that, and that's why kids, after they go home, they count down till they get to come back. They're like, I want to go back and be around other kids and other staff that just like get it, love me, love what I'm about, and just want to help. So
Yeah.
And being in that clinical setting when kids would come back from those camp experiences, you're like, so how was camp? I mean, they would just light up and they would talk about it through their whole visit about all the things they got to do and all the friends that they made. And then they're going to keep in touch with those friends. So as far as like the social emotional part of it, you could see that change in the kids when they would come back from
Yeah.
camp and they'd come back for their appointments.
I feel so nostalgic now, just listening to hear. I'm like, I want to go back to
I
when I
know.
was younger and have that experience all over again. Now, in terms of safety measures, when it comes to choosing the right camp, in your opinion, what are some essential safety measures that all camps should have in place for children, especially when we're taking into consideration those attending who have medical needs?
Yeah, so I just highlighted for one camp. I just did a presentation in March. It was either February or March for a camp that highlighted safety measures. And we broke it up into 4 parts. The application part alone. That's where, like, first and foremost, we're going to get as much information about your child on that application, be as honest, be as upfront, put it on there. Because that helps kind of understand the needs that, for that specific kid. So we're going to look at the application process. They're going to look at the medical team and who they need to have in place for that week of camp or that summer of camp, those kinds of things. Staff training and orientation is very thorough. So they're going to go through that, making sure they have the staff in place to meet the needs for the campers. And then camp itself, like looking at all aspects of camp, every building, every activity area, every, walking zone, that kind of thing. So that camp in particular was looking at all of those aspects. So it was really cool to break it down with them and just highlight all the amazing things they're doing in place. Another thing that's important when you're looking into camps is staff-child ratio. Like, is it 2 to 1? Is it 1 to 1? Like, is it 4 to 1? Like, what are their guidelines when it is called for, like, how many kids to every staff member, that kind of thing. I also highlighted, when do they administer meds and what's that process like? And is it one nurse assigned to a cabin? Those kinds of things that helps them get used to, get to know all of their campers and understand the meds that are needed and around the clock. So they are very thorough. This is not their first rodeo. These are the professionals. So really encouraging parents and caregivers to lean into them for those questions that they have around all of those measures that are in place. This is your opportunity. Ask the questions they want you to ask, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And Angela, can I ask you, and you might get to this at some point, but
Yeah.
so if there are, because I know the camps you were involved in, there were specific weeks.
Yeah.
So is there a change in staffing from like one week to the other based on whatever that diagnosis week is?
Yeah. So some are a little bit more hands-on and more they just require a lot more like lifting and moving around. So they might, for example, a camp might be campers come on Sunday and they leave Thursday. So it might traditionally be a 4-night overnight camp. But if it's a more hands-on week, they might only do 3 nights because so much more goes into it. So they're going to make those adjustments and those accommodations as necessary. And, they're going to have more staff if they can than needed for those, situations where they need more people, which is nice. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the perfect segue actually into, you had mentioned staff training.
Yeah.
So what type of training do you recommend, or what type of training have you been part of or seen before when it comes to properly training camp staff to support children with disabilities?
Yeah. So my background, so just so they understand, I've been a part of, like I said, I worked for a camp that served children. It was 8 different weeks in the summer. So that 8 to 9 weeks. So the staff that were hired to come in for that camp, it's a well-oiled machine. It's amazing to see. They would come in mid-May and do about 2 to 3 weeks of staff training, like thorough, intensive, like very detailed orientation before the campers arrived, because each week was going to be a new set of campers coming in. And so for example, if 1 week was going to be sickle cell. Before those kids would come in, they would, outside of the traditional staff training, they would also go into diagnosis specific information about that set of campers coming in for the week. So they would do that on Saturday or Sunday before the campers would arrive, which is nice. So they do that each week in addition to traditional staff training. Another camp I'm a part of and I volunteer for just rents out a camp for a week in the summer. So you might see those as well. And so the staff training, we arrive on Saturday and get training Saturday and Sunday, and then the campers come Monday to Saturday. So it's just going to vary based on the type of camp that you're looking at, whether they rent out a week at a traditional summer camp setting or they are a part of a whole summer, or each week is a different diagnosis. So it's going to look different, but they're all going to cover the basics based on the time that they have, and whether they can be more thorough or not is just based on the whole summer versus a week of camp. So yeah.
And that's a good point too, Sardiana, to
please.
bring up, is like a camp running out a traditional camp versus something else that they have their week.
Yeah.
Because that's going to also offer you more. Do you want more of the traditional, everything's outdoors, temperatures, something to take into account,
More
or
rustic.
their air conditioned buildings for kids, especially a lot of our kids with HIE who might have temperature regulation issues. So maybe that's something that you're going to like, maybe we need to make sure that there's an air conditioned space if that's something.
And those are things I think towards the end we'll talk about, just questions in general, so we can go over that. But those are things as caregivers ask, what is the setting? What does this camp look like? That's why I also encourage to look at their website, follow them on social media, so you can get an idea for the actual physical spaces at camp. So
like how rustic do you want to go?
Are we? Let's define rustic. So is it glamping or There's a wide range, and they all bring different benefits, which is what I love. I like getting a variety. So
yeah, I'm just laughing because I'm like, if it were up to me, it'd be like 0% rustic, which is funny because I live in the middle of nowhere, like country, and I'm just like, ooh. So we can switch gears now to kind of medical and emergency preparedness. What do you feel like should be included in a medical or an emergency action plan for a camp? And then some sub questions I have there. How do camps prepare for those emergencies, including if a child needs to be transported to a hospital, let's say?
Yeah, no, I love this question. I actually went on a few camp websites just to kind of see what they talk about when it talks about like medical emergencies and partnering with hospitals. So first and foremost, you are going to be, again, as detailed as possible with that camper application. You traditionally have like a camper page all about the camper, and then you'll have a medical part. So providing yourself with time to fill out that, because then more than likely your medical team is going to have to sign off on that information. I used to be, in my previous child life role, I was the one that got the application sent to me. I communicated a lot with the camp, and I would work with our triage nurse, and we would get everything filled and then send it back to the camp. So I've seen that process, but it's not something, say it's Thursday and the camper application is due on Friday. You might not want to send it the day before. You might want to give yourself time. Okay. So just being real about that. But so be as detailed as possible about that. You are going to provide all the medications needed for the time your child is at that camp, whether it's an overnight or a day camp, those kinds of things. You're going to provide all of that. Everything's going to be labeled. When you go to camp and check your child in, you are going to either, if you physically take your child to that camp, you are going to meet the medical team and drop off the meds, which is nice, and have that another layer of communication, which I think is so important. If it's one where I've seen it where campers come to a school and then charter buses pick those kids up and take them to camp. With that, the medical team comes to that bus stop and picks up the meds and communicates with the family. So there's a lot of communication going around. I also said that, camps are going to partner with hospitals. So based on your location. So the camp I worked for was located near Greensboro, North Carolina. So we had 2 hospitals within 20 to 30 miles of the camp, and they partnered with those hospitals, which is nice. And that information is put on the camp's website. Like in case of an emergency, these are the hospitals where we transport and work with, which is great. So I think that provides a level of assurance and safety for these families to know, like, we're going to do whatever we can at camp, but if it's outside of what we can do, we are going to then transport them where they need to go. And all of that is communicated with the families. I was at a camp one year, and this was in the mountains, and I was with a camper who needed to be transported. I rode in the ambulance. I knew her. I was like, I'm going to go with her. I stayed with her until they then transported her back to Charlotte. So we are going to be there for those campers. We're not going to leave them. We're there for them 24/7,
Yeah, that's a big job, but it's so nice. I just have that level of reassurance.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to also say, during staff training, we do medical drills. We practice emergencies, weather emergencies and medical emergencies. Like, where do we go if something happens? How do we communicate on walkie-talkies? What is the language we're using? Those kinds of things. So we're doing all of those before the campers even come.
Yes. In terms of going back to staff members and qualifications, what I know you mentioned they go through very intense training. In addition to that, what other qualifications do they typically have, especially in this context when they're working with children with some type of medical complexity?
So when you apply to become a staff member, the camp's going to find out, they're going to do a background check, which is great. They're going to do a thorough interview. They're then going to, once you're selected and you figure out which role you're going to do, you get training in that role, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a supportive staff member, whether it's an activity team member, lifeguard, those kinds of things. You're going to have all of that training done prior to the campers arriving. But I think it's important to understand, traditionally you see college students that are, coming, need a job during the summer, want to work with kids. So my background's child life. I did summer camp every summer leading up to my graduation. I knew I wanted to work with kids, so I did summer camps. So you'll see child life specialists, you'll see recreational therapists, you'll see speech pathologists, like physical, what is it? I'm drawing a blank, but like PT, physical therapy, like people that are interested in the medical profession, teachers who have the summer off, like, I'm going to work, at a summer camp. So usually they are hopefully passionate about working with children. But through that interview, the camp that I worked for, they didn't just do one interview. It was like a 3-step process. So know that these staff are going to be screened. They're going to go through scenarios. They're going to make sure you understand what you're coming into in order to work at a camp. I mean, so I like that background check, thorough interviews, and then training, based on, what you need to know before these kids come, and then what area you're going to be kind of working at during that camp time.
Yeah. Now, you kind of already touched on some of this, so this is really more of an opportunity for you to expand. But going back to medical needs or medications, are there nurses on staff or medical staff, and are they there 24/7? It does depend on the camp, and then how is medication typically managed? So I know some of this might be redundant, but I know.
No, what's nice? No, absolutely. So the two, like I said, I come from a background where it is a 365-day camp run process where, they have the summer camps in the week. They do family weekends in the fall and spring. So this camp in particular actually has like a clinic, like an actual on-site medical clinic, which is nice. So if a child needs to go and get medication, they can go there. If they need to stay for a little while and get some fluids, they can do that. If they need to spend the night in that, clinical area, they can do that. So they have round the clock 24/7 medical coverage. nurses, they have nurses that, in a year-round programming, you're going to see nurses that are there, but also volunteer nurses that might come in for a week or two because they just love camp. And then at all times, a physician is kind of on site as well, which is nice. It's more challenging for a physician to stay for the whole 9 weeks. So usually based on the medical specialty or medical diagnosis for that week, you might get a physician that rotates based on the diagnosis, which is nice. But the nurses are there. The actual full-time nurses are going to be there, and then they have volunteer nurses that come in, which is nice for the week or two. And then for the camp that I am at that rents out a camp in the week, so just for 1 week in that summer, 24/7 medical coverage as well. So that's just a given. So I would just ask, when you're looking at camps, what does your medical coverage look like? And then how do they administer medications? And are they assigned to a cabin, or do they take on the whole camp? I mean, where I've seen it at both camps, I have a lot more experience with, they're assigned to cabins, which is nice. So they really get to know those kids throughout the whole week. They understand their when meds need to be administered. I've been in a cabin as a counselor at night. If a kid has a tummy ache, we go to the med shack, we go to that area, and I let them know, we're going to, as a counselor, as a staff member, I'm going to take everything serious. And I mean, I when in doubt, let's go ask, that kind of thing. So I am never going to say, they're probably okay. No, we're going to go to the body shop, to the med shack, and we're going to look into this. So
I had the opportunity actually to go to the camp that she was at for a while, the one that did the year rounds, and tour around. And I couldn't believe everything that they had.
Impressive.
The whole med building, which is where the nurses and the doctors were, and where they kept all the meds and refrigerators and like all of that stuff. So they were very well equipped with everything that they had.
Yeah. And I mean, and also the campers know what they need. They know what time it is. Like they'll even, hey, it's lunchtime. It's time for my, which is nice.
That is so true.
They do. It's empowerment also for them. They're used to being around at home with their caregivers and families, or at the, doctor's office. They are getting empowered to advocate for themselves too, which is great. So it's nice to see the kids, they know. So
I had that experience too back when I was doing trip chaperoning. There were kids who had their alarms on their watches, and they'd come up to me before I could even find them and say, "It's time." I'm like, "You are so responsible."
And also another thing that's important to know, as staff, we might have meds that we're taking too. None of that is left in the cabin. We have to leave those things in the med areas, which is nice. So even as simple as like ibuprofen and Tylenol, like that, none of that can be in our room or cabin areas. So I think that's important to know too.
Yes. Thank you for that. In terms of, we're going to talk a little bit more about inclusion and accessibility. What are some effective ways that camp staff can foster inclusion and prevent any type of social isolation, which we know is so easy to happen, especially in a school setting? We see that all the time.
Absolutely. I think it's important to note, leading up to camp, we are planning, we are prepping, we are so excited. We have these camp themes. We have all these new exciting activities that we look forward to seeing get played out. So just know, like, so much prep comes into getting these campers to camp that when they get there, we are ready, we are powered up, we are excited, and just ready. And we will meet my goal as a counselor is to meet that camper where they're at. It's challenge by choice. Again, getting to know them at the beginning of the week. What do you want to get out of this week? Have you been to camp before? Is this your first time? That kind of thing. What's nice is usually it's a cabin. I can't say the number that's going to be in a cabin. I've been in a cabin where there's only 8 campers. And then I've been in a cabin where there's, 13 or 14. It just varies based on the staff ratio and how many kids can actually fit in a cabin. But they're all going to be around the same age. Some may have been to camp before, some might know each other, which is okay. But as a staff member, I'm going to be mindful of those things. We get a lot of training around inclusion, including kids in activities. team building activities, those kinds of things. So as the week, the first day, everybody's got nerves and jitters and things like that. So as the week moves on, if I notice a kid is kind of not is a little bit more withdrawn, if I have some campers that are just great leaders in general, I might be like, hey, you're such a great, you include everybody in activities, and I've noticed that so and so might not be as excited. Is there anything we can do to get them more involved? And usually those campers enjoy having that not job, but like just that responsibility to kind of be more inclusive and include them in those kinds of things. So, and then I'm like, peer support is better than sometimes adult support. So having them rally around each other, but we look at those things. Homesickness does happen. That's just kids in general and overnight camps, but we really try to focus on like meeting them where they're at. If it's happening, talking about it's okay to miss your family. They're missing you too, probably, those kinds of things. But what are we excited to do? What's our next activity, or what are we doing this evening? And then if it happens at night, hey, we're going to get through the night and let's talk about what we can do in the morning. If you feel this way in the morning, we'll talk about it. We're never going to be like, silly to feel that way. No, we're gonna totally. That is something that is discussed and talked about a lot. But we have so many activities that are going to be building them up as a cabin or just individually that usually, and if they really truly don't feel like they're having a good week, we definitely have other team members that have other roles that can provide that support to them. And if I don't ever encourage contacting families. Not that I don't encourage it, but it's something we don't advertise that we do. But if you have to do it behind the scenes, you definitely, will have that opportunity too.
Yeah. But I like that, pushing like resilience and finding alternative ways to get through. And everything's always worse at night, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm okay.
Like, all right, it's talent show day, and as a cabin, they're going to do something together, or it's the dance night, or it's movie night, or it's, wacky tacky Tuesday. I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that go on in a day, so we really just take it morning, afternoon, evening,
I like that.
Yeah.
There are lots of children in our community who communicate via AAC devices. So I guess I'm wondering what that looks like at camp and how that's supported. And
yeah, it's definitely support. Again, this goes back to the application. Put as much information on as needed. And then if you need to have a one-on-one conversation, camp may encourage you to bring, if it's okay to bring those devices in. So just communicating all of that with staff. So again, that's just a part of the application process, the medical piece, those kinds of things. If they need more of a one-on-one person, I think staff, those kinds of things just need to be communicated and handled on an individual basis. So,
okay. I think a lot of parents are also super interested in just what a typical camp day
I love
looks like. Yeah. So if you could walk us through that, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. So typical day, kids, it starts early. If a kid's there to sleep in and lounge by the pool, maybe, it's good to talk about the schedule before they come, but they're going to wake up. They're going to have breakfast usually. And then a lot of times camps, just based on the two that I've worked primarily with, there's like morning activities that maybe in the span of a 2 to 3 hour window, they rotate around to different activity periods, which is nice. And then, and they're usually with their cabin, or maybe they partner with another cabin, similar age, or like male and female cabins, which is nice. So they can get to know other campers. So they do their activity period in the morning. Then they usually go to lunch. Usually snacks are provided too throughout the day. We understand, kids are doing a lot more activities than maybe normal. So we're going to provide them with those opportunities, lots of opportunities to drink water. Usually they have water bottles that they're carrying around too, which is nice. So hydration, sunscreen, those kinds of things. So after lunch is usually when there's like a recharge period, or a rest period, where they go back to their cabins and they're kind of either encouraged to kind of just do a quiet activity or even just kind of lay on their bed. Some kids are like, I won't fall asleep. they end up falling asleep. It's nice to get that recharge.
Mhm.
And then they're going to break out into their afternoon. So it's either another round of organized activities or a free time. It just depends. And usually with free time, their counselors are going to divide and go with each group as they want to go about the activity periods, or they're again with more of a organized activity. So it could be craft cabin, it could be adventure, it could be the pool, it could be some camps have waterfront, it could be the lake, it could be I've been at a camp where a group came with Legos and did like a leg, it's just going to
Mm.
vary each day.
Yeah.
So they do their afternoon activities, then they go back, get ready for dinner. And then usually in the evening, camps usually have some kind of like camp evening activity. And that's where Monday might be opening night, where they get to know the camp in general, and they have a just welcome party. Tuesday might be like an obstacle course where you're rotating around to different activities. Wednesday could be movie night. Thursday could be talent show. And then Friday, the last night, is a dance or a carnival. Every camp's going to be different. And then usually lights out, they go back to their cabin, get to wind down. One camp that I participate in especially does a cabin chat in the evening where they reflect on the day, which is so nice. And they have like a battery operated candle, and they pass that around and talk. It could be a silly question, it could be a more serious question, but just allowing them an opportunity to think about their day, think about what they did that day. A question could be, what's something you're proud of that you did today? Or what's something that worried you, but you overcame it, or if you could have a pool filled with anything, what would it be? I mean, it's going to vary,
Yeah.
but it's just nice to have. That's probably my favorite part of the day, is when the lights are twinkling in your cabin. And especially for me, all my girls were hanging out on the bed and we're just talking about our day, and just seeing them all encourage each other or say like, you did this today. It's just, that's my favorite time of the day is wind down time at at the end of the
It's
day.
such a great, I mean, just all these camp things, like not only is it fun, but they really are getting so much out of it, from that reflection piece that they probably don't
Yeah.
really do often, to them maybe having the not like you said, not responsibility, but kind of asking them to take on another camper who's maybe having a harder time. Like, that's probably not something that maybe they don't get asked that to do that in school. So this is their opportunity to be the leader that maybe they don't have the time to do that.
These kids, I'm in awe of them. To be a 6-year-old coming to an overnight camp, I have a 5-year-old daughter at home, and I'm like, she could go to camp next summer. And I've always been one that encourages it. So, kudos to caregivers for sending their kids to camp, and these campers for coming and embracing it, not knowing anybody, and then going through a whole day of camp. They're exhausted. By the end of the day, they sleep good. And if anything happens in the middle of the night, I'm usually in a cabin. We're spaced throughout the cabin to provide that support to campers however they need. But a day is traditionally, they could wake up at 7 and lights out at 9. It's going to vary. So ask those questions as a parent or a caregiver. Hey, what can you give me an idea of what a schedule looks like? Those kinds of things. And another thing to note, if a kid needs more rest time or recharge than what is provided, they can get that. So we're not going to just push them. We will look out for things like that based on where they're at with their treatments, things that their body needs. So we're never going to, overdo it.
It sounds like there's a lot of choice within the structure.
Yes.
And I think that's
a choice. Yeah.
I love that.
Participation or not. Some kids are a little more slow to warm up, so they can sit on the sidelines, and one of us, a staff member, is beside them. Whenever you feel like you want to participate, we can do it, but I'm going to be right here with you, that kind of thing. So,
we're going to move into, we have a quick question. I know it might seem silly, but packing and essentials. That's like, leading up to any time my family's going somewhere, I do 99% of the packing, and my husband forgets the one thing that I asked him to put in the car, which is another issue for another day. But it takes a long time to figure out what you're,
Yeah.
and to be thoughtful and purposeful. So if you have any must-have items that you could share with parents or caregivers, what should they pack?
And
for their
again,
child?
yeah, this is gonna vary on the camp too. So they will provide you when they like you get a acceptance packet, you'll get a packing list, which is so nice. And follow that packing list. If they say bring 8 t-shirts, pack 8 t-shirts. You know what I mean? Maybe pack an extra. Let's pack 1 extra, that kind of thing. So they will give you a list. The 2 camps that I've been a part of, one camp, the year-round camp, provides the bedding, provides the sheets, the blankets, the pillows. The other camp that I'm part of that rents out a week, the campers have to bring their bedding, they have to bring their pillows. So it's going to vary based on the camp. Some camps that are a little bit more rustic, you might have to bring a little bedside fan that like clips on and attaches. Some camps are going to have thematic days or breakfast. Don't feel pressure that you have to pack everything. And if you feel that pressure, talk to that camp, because sometimes they might be like, no worries, we always buy extra stuff and we have things stashed if a camper doesn't bring something. So the camp is going to have extra supplies. They're going to have sunscreen. They're going to have bedding if something happens. They're going to have extra pajamas and clothes. So if something happens and things get soiled, some camps even have laundry where they can go and wash something.
Nice. Okay.
So just pay attention to the packing list. It's always going to be clothes you don't really, you're not packing your finest of the fine, but they're going to have messy things. Closed-toed shoes are important, or like the strappy, like Tiva-like sandals, those kinds of things, but definitely closed-toed shoes, bathing suits, shorts, t-shirts, things that are airy because you're going to be moving and going about, flashlights. It's going to vary, but what's nice is you get that list every summer. I mean, I've been doing camp for, like I said, 18 years. I still look at that packing list. Like, what am I forgetting?
Any guidance? Yes.
Yeah.
Any guidance? I think
Yes.
would be.
Yeah. A rain jacket. You never know. I mean, what the weather's going to be like. And again, if there's something that you don't have, just talk to the camp, because more than likely they have it or they get donations. I mean, camps get lots of donations. So we don't want to put any extra stress on families. That kind of thing. So, but always encourage them, if you feel like they might need something from home, bringing a stuffed animal or a blanket, their favorite blanket or their favorite pillowcase, those kinds of things for that comfort,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good point, actually making sure that they do have that, especially for a first-time camper.
Mm-hmm.
So you that have that little piece of home, whatever that is, brings that little extra comfort, whether it be a little tiny bracelet that mom's also wearing or something like that.
Something.
It can be tiny.
Picture of your family, Also, if you can do it, send them a letter, or some camps have like an email system where you can email them a letter. So they'll give it to them midweek, which is nice. So just ask the camps about that. Like, what's your policy around care packages? Or do you have a way that I can send them a note midweek, So, yeah.
Speaking of first-time campers, what advice do you have for parents or caregivers who are nervous about sending their child to camp for the first time or contemplating it? And if you maybe have like a success story to share, that would be nice too.
I definitely have a story, but I wanted to just say your nerves are completely normal. Like, give yourself some grace. These are your children. This is your baby. This is your most precious gift in life. So it's okay to be nervous. Talk to other other parents or caregivers that you're a part of that maybe have gone to camp. Hey, how was it? Those kinds of things. So just embrace the nerves. That's normal. It's going to happen. Talk to people and kind of get a better idea. But just know we are so excited for your kid to come to camp that we're like the night before the kids arrive, I'm anxious. I'm like, I can't even sleep. I'm so excited. I like set like 3 alarms so I don't miss it, because I'm just ready to get up and get the camp ready or or go greet the campers. So like, we are ready. We are ready for your kid to come. We've been looking forward to this all summer or all month, whatever the time is. So we are ready. Ask any questions. There's no silly questions. I was going to share a story because when I worked at the clinic, I was there for 12 years and I worked primarily with kids with hematology and oncology. So that was the population. So I understand, the intensity of a child's treatment, what they're going through, those kinds of things. I have two stories. I have a kid that was 6 and he had been going through treatment since he was 17 months old, and he was 6 and all he wanted to do was come to camp. He's like, I want to come to camp. I want to come to camp. And his mom's like, he is not coming to camp. And her mom, so his grandmother actually was like, yes, he is. He's going to camp. And she was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And he went to camp as a 6-year-old. He was the tiniest little 6-year-old. And I was like, I can't believe he's here. And she was like, I'm sending him. He's going. And he is now probably 19. And I still see him at this camp. So he went from 6 to 16. Wow. As a camper, and he is now a counselor in training. He comes as a counselor and gives back. And he's like, I'm here for life. So I think for any parent or caregiver, if you're nervous, totally normal, but think about the impact that this camp experience. I think this is something we really haven't touched on, that this is going to have for your child for years to come, not just for this summer, but this, if no matter what their age, even if they come as a 15-year-old and they can go for 2 summers or they can only go for 1, they are going to be a part of a family that gets that. And then they can keep coming back in different roles. This could be a whole life-changing experience.
And do you have a lot of kids? Have you seen a lot of kids come back as counselors once they aged out of the camper experience?
Yeah, there is nothing more impactful than
the impact of, right?
Yeah, there is nothing more impactful than seeing a group of counselors in training. We call them CITs or LITs that are like 18 to 20. And then when they actually become a counselor and they are like, I get it. I get what these kids are going through, and they just pour into them. And I'm like, you guys are our future leaders. Like, I can't be doing camp. I need to retire eventually. I can't be doing this. I've been doing this for a minute. And so it's nice to see the next generation that's coming in ready to care and that gets it because they were in their shoes. So there are so many benefits to camp. It builds self-esteem. It builds confidence. I mean, there's so many. So,
and I did have an HIE family reach out, and I had just met with a camp director, and the camp director was like, oh my gosh, here, give her my information, tell her to come tour. We want to do anything we can to make them feel comfortable with camp, like anything. So call us, ask us questions, tour. We can do a virtual tour. I'll set up something to meet with the counselors. Like, she was all in to do anything to help one of our families, which was super sweet.
Again, look for those opportunities for family weekends or to go tour. Follow them on social media. Look at their websites. Like, they are putting it out there because they want kids to come. We can't have camp if kids aren't coming, Right. So we want them to come, It's amazing. And as if you have siblings, seeing how they can get involved too, because that's such an important population that needs the love and support as well. So, so look for those opportunities.
Just because we're on the topic, and I'm going to skip a couple of questions and go out of order, but you had said, such a magical and powerful experience with long-lasting impacts. I would just kind of want to talk about that more right now. Why do you believe that camp can be such a healing and empowering experience for kids, especially in our community?
Because I've seen it. I mean, I have seen it firsthand for the past 18 years. It is when a kid who comes that is unsure about a lot of things, they get some kind of confidence throughout the week that when they leave, they are a different kid, and they're recharged. They're full. They get this confidence. I've seen it in so many situations. And when I'm there with other staff that I've worked with, we're all like blown away. We're like, look at this. This is why we do it. Like,
the difference in how they are when they come to clinic and then how they would be at camp. They were like
To-
different children, right?
Wow.
Totally. And then
Yeah.
I also then follow up with families too. I'm like, look at what have y'all continued to see? And some camps offer like throughout the year, they might have camp connection events where outside of the week long of camp, you maybe can go to a holiday party or you can go to a, bowling event or a corn maze. I don't know. Every camp's going to be different, but participate in those. If your camp that you're a part of has those camp connections,
Mhm.
that way they can get a little sprinkle of that camp magic and they can, all right, I saw one of my counselors or I'm excited for next, so hopefully camp can support you not only the week of camp, but year round. And I think another thing that is important that we really haven't touched on is what it does for caregivers. Like you guys do so much, pour so much in all the time, 24/7, that sometimes you don't even realize when your kid gets this awesome opportunity, that the reprieve you get and the recharge you get as a caregiver. Like you got to take care of yourself too. I've had caregivers be like, what other camp can I sign my kid up for? Because it was a benefit for them, like the camp, the child and the caregiver. They're like, I didn't know I needed this. Like,
Yeah. I think that's what it is. Like you're just go, go, go. And this is your day. You get, and then when you do have the break, you're like, oh, I didn't even
that's
realize.
all you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time to connect with yourself again and to identify someone other than a caregiver just for a minute is what I think should be very powerful.
Totally. So listen, it's hard. It's nerve-wracking. It's scary. All of those things. If you send your child and they make it only through 2 nights, they've done something. So give yourself some grace, and it's okay if it doesn't work out for that whole week. But if you do a night or 2 or 3, you never know. So
I know, Annie, you have a hard stop in 4 minutes. So I just want to make sure we get to important questions to ask, and we'll compile these and make a pretty PDF for families to print off, etc. Good questions to ask from parents to camp directors or camp staff before signing up for that camp that you have.
So these are just some things that I kind of jotted down that I've just heard or seen, those kinds of things. So why should I send my kid to your camp? Like what is your camp about? What stands out about your camp? That's a great place to start. How do you select staff for your camp? So what's that process like? What does a typical day look like, as we noted with the schedule? What are the facilities like? Like, what is it more outdoorsy, or do they have air conditioned areas? Those kinds of things. What does a cabin or the sleeping arrangements look like? That's important. How does the staff communicate with caregivers if something were to happen? What's that process like? What happens if my child gets homesick? Do you have a cell phone policy? Like every camp's going to vary on this. The 2 that I've been a part of, cell phones do not come to camp, that kind of thing. So if you have those, adolescents, letting them understand, prep them ahead of time. What should I pack, as we noted, is important. What's the staff child ratio, and can siblings attend camp? And if they can't attend that week, do you have another week for siblings? Those kinds of things. I think those are just good starters. I think it's important, if you start the camp process, get a notebook, write everything down, deadlines. I think another thing important that Annie and I talked about was, what is your deadline for applications? So both camps that I'm a part of, one starts early December. They start enrollment, which is, you're not even thinking you're in holiday season, but it's like they start at December, like the first week of December, and the other one is January. So we, as camps, we've got to prep and get things ready. So we are looking for those applications in the
deadlines are way before camp.
So
it's like stuff that you were talking about.
So looking at that. So I think, again, there are no silly questions, but those are some just good starters, and then like, how many, is it an overnight? Is it a day camp? Those kinds of things. How many nights, all those things.
And this is an opportunity for parents and caregivers to tailor their questions to their child's needs. Of course.
You're going to have more specific. Yeah.
And it seems like there are opportunities, whether via email or a phone call, to talk to and get these questions.
They are
not
available
just via the application.
Yeah, they will communicate whether to call them or email them. They will provide all of that information on the website and through the application process. Yeah.
Wonderful. We always love to end with just recommended resources to help our families understand where to go to learn more. So, what would you recommend parents go to in terms of websites or resources um, to have a safe and successful camp experience?
Again, it depends on your area.
Yeah.
And again, talk to your medical team about organizations or camps, those kinds of things. Again, Serious Fun is a great, this isn't a plug for Serious Fun, but this is just one that does expand across the whole country and
Mhm.
world. So again, I don't know all of the people and the locations of everybody, but that's a great one to just start with and see like what they're about, what, resources they have, those kinds of things. You can look up camps in general, medical camps for children living with, and then fill in the
Yeah.
blank, those kinds of things, and look up their websites and look up their any people that have provided feedback or
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So just start small. It can be overwhelming, but just start small. Talk to your medical team. Google, I'm not about Google, but in a way, Google and look up Serious Fun,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining us. This has been so informational and knowledgeable, and I hope families leave this just feeling a little bit more confident and
Yeah.
empowered, having the tools they need to give help their child get that wonderful experience. So
Totally.
we'll do a blog and key takeaways. Perhaps if you're able or willing, we can include contact information
Yeah.
for you just in case anyone has some questions. I'm sure that they might. Otherwise, they can always reach out to Annie and be
Yeah.
connected via Annie
Definitely.
as well.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time. And for everyone, thank you for tuning in. And next month, I believe we're going to talk about how to talk to your child about an HIE diagnosis or any other secondary diagnoses in a developmentally appropriate language. So you can look forward to that. But until then, thanks,
No.
everyone.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angela.